College Literature, Arts, and Lecture Series. You should have all gotten a copy of a poem in English and in Farsi. So did you get that before you came in? I see the people out there if you haven't. Anyway, if you haven't been here before, please sign our mailing list, and we will forever send you our programs. An email or a snail mail, whatever. This is a really exciting series, and I'm there. Come on down. Come close. I'm very excited about it. Next week we have Old and New Worlds of Flamenco, and we have 3 musicians who are going to be performing, so that's going to be very exciting. And then we have Forgotten Foster Park. We have a woman who lived on Highway 33, and she has a book out. She's going to tell the story. And that's followed, for those of you who love poetry, you're here because you love Rumi. We have 2 poets from the Central Coast. You can pick up one of these out there on your way out, and we have flyers for every single event that is going to be coming up in the future. So please help yourself, and we'd love to see you back. So today, I'm very excited because I love Rumi. Fariba Enteshair, am I pronouncing it right? Enteshair? Enteshair, yeah. Fariba Enteshair is presenting here. She's an EDD. She's an international educator specializing in Rumi. So she's devoted her whole life to the transformational teachings of Rumi through his poetic and epic masterpiece, Mathlawi. I'm butchering the pronunciation. She'll get it right. And it's 7 stages of enlightenment. Through her years of teaching Rumi to a wide variety of students, she's researched the beneficial and healing aspects and effects of Rumi's poetry on the lives of her students. She was born in Iran. She's fluent in Rumi's native language, which is Farsi, and his culture, which allows her to share the original melody and cadences in Farsi. So you have a poem in English and in Farsi, and I have gone to some of her workshops personally on Rumi, and they're amazing. So let's give her a very warm welcome.
Hello. Hello. I'm delighted to be here with you, and it's always a joy to be able to share Rumi's visions with you. Rumi is a 13th century Persian poet who was born in Balkh. Balkh is today in Afghanistan. These borders didn't exist 300 years ago. And so his language is Farsi. He wrote his original poetry in Farsi, but because he had moved when he was 13 years old from Balkh in Great Persia, Afghanistan today, 800 years ago, he resided in Konya, so you will see a lot of advertising and everything that he's also famous as Turkish, but in reality he's universal. We all can enjoy in 21st century his poetry. So he is like cross-cultural. I am happy to share with you a number of poetry. We have a short time, so we cannot touch on everything, but what we can touch on is the levels of his wisdom and his teaching today. And I will give you a brief introduction about him and the diversity within his poetry. And after that, we just start reading some poems. At first, few short poems, so you can explore a bit the diversity and the level of wisdom within ourselves that he is teaching, and then we go to the longer poem. And my hope is that just you hear a bit in Farsi, a couple of poems in English, and are able to just, today nibble on some of these verses. Was written 800 years ago, but today we can use it very much like 800 years ago. It's the truth, it's the language of the truth. And let me see. Okay. Okay. All right. So I am expert in his Masnavi. He was 40 years old when he started writing poetry, and he was Islamic clergy. So he was very much into the, his duty as a high-rank Islamic clergy, and he was just charity, juristic duties, taking care of people's needs. And when he was 40 years old, something happened in their life. He went through some transformation. And he wrote 60,000 verses. And he died around 65. So you can imagine 60,000 verses. 27 to 30,000 of these verses are within his masterpiece, Masnavi, which is, shows the wisdom teachings all in one long tail poetry, storytelling. And this is his masterpiece. That's what I had to study in an original language for 8 years. So it's very much like Old Testament and New Testament. It's tricky to study the work, so it took me a while, although I can speak Farsi. So he was living in 13th century. What is important for us, he wrote Masnavi, the 26,000 verses. At the end of his life, they gathered together, the students, and he was just speaking this poetry out of his heart. Most important is his transcriber, Hossam, was writing this poetry, and then he was editing it at night with him. So it's more constructive teachings of wisdom known up to the 13th century. And it's amazing that we can open his poetry today and relate to it so well, so many years later. Okay. All right. Let's talk about his masterpiece a bit. In his teaching, Masnavi, Rumi was able to cross all the borders among different nations and teach them, teach tolerance and wisdom of the awakened heart. Masnavi also drawn from the available original sources provided a comprehensive overview of Rumi's knowledge of his time. Rumi's poetry mirrors, that's a very important point for us today, the soul journey. Rumi is a poet who yearned to tell us about our journey of the journey of our spirit in the matter, in our body. This is why he calls his book the Masnavi. Its meaning in Arabic is a long poem. And we are going to actually start to talk about some of these poetry so you can be able to experience it today yourself before you leave. The phenomena of the mysticism in all Abrahamic tradition is about the direct connection of an individual to God. This phenomena appears when an individual experiences an intense desire deep within and is compelled to search for the truth. That's the true meaning of Sufi. Sufi is a seeker of the path of the truth. And Rumi's mystical poetry is rooted in the wisdom teachings of Sufism, the mystical dimension of Islam. At first glance, it is obvious that the book of Masnavi has used many stories of Old Testament, New Testament, Quran, among other masterpieces. It doesn't end only with the holy scripts. He has stories from Hinduism, from Buddhism, from old Persian culture. A number of stories are from 4th century Persian literature. So he was very known with the literature up to his time, as I mentioned. This is about his transformation when he was around 40 years old. This wandering dervish appears on his path and challenged him. Basically, Rumi is grandson of a king, and a lot of ego is attached to the wisdom that he is offering to his time. He is worshipped and adored by the kings and queens. People travel many, thousands of miles in 13th century to study with him. So Shams comes and challenges him. And I believe that the challenge was about the growth. What does all this knowledge do for your spirit? And that's what the Shams has passed on to him. What is it doing for you? What is it doing for your heart? So I call Shams Yar. It's a friend of God, but also in Farsi is translated as lover or a very good friend. But truly in his poetry, Yar is a friend of God, someone God sent to open our path, to open our heart. His disciple, of course, were jealous about it. Rumi's disciple, that this man from nowhere showed up and, just took the master away and has so much time with the master. So they were upset. They kind of threatened Shams. And in a mysterious way, he disappeared. And these 60,000 verses actually is from the longing that Rumi had for the place that he could feel himself when he was in front and presence of Shams. I would think, because we have a very short time, we just experience some of these poems on our own, and then you just, close your eyes or not, but experience of his poetry today is what is important for us. This one is really shows the meaning of the path that Rumi is offering to us. Doesn't matter which time we are living on. There is a force within you that gives you life. Seek that. In your body, there lies a priceless jewel. Seek that. Oh, wandering Sufi, if you are in a search of the greatest treasure, don't look outside. Look within and seek that. So, one of the mastery that Rumi has is to teach us direction. And what he believes in direction is never about outside you, it's always searching within yourself. And just with these few verses, you and I can actually feel what he is encouraging us to do. He is encouraging us to look within and search the treasure that you have given. As we say, life is a gift, and Rumi believes in that. So life is a gift here, and he is encouraging us to look within and find the treasures that we are given. The next one is really close to my heart. Gamble everything for love if you are a true human being. If not, leave this gathering. Half-heartedness does not reach into majesty. you set out to find God, but then you keep stopping for long periods at mean-spirited road houses. So who knows what Rumi is talking about here? As human, are we getting distracted when we have a plan? So distraction is a nature of human being, and Rumi is really a good teacher to tell us when you set out to do something, really set your direction and be foolhardy about it. Just don't do it half and half, just completely. Here? So I read it again to you. Gamble everything for love. If you are a true human being, if not, leave this gathering. Half-heartedness does not reach into majesty. You set out, let me look at that. Okay. You set out to find God, but then you keep stopping for long periods at mean-spirited roadhouses. So that is something that shows the level of the direction. He believes a lot of his teaching is about connection, 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 or direction. And here is a poem that shows the direction. Let's look at the next one. Okay, let yourself be silently drawn by the strong pull of what you really love. Yet let yourself be silently drawn by the strong pull of what you really love. So, I think you can guess what this poem is again about. Yeah? Direction. He insists very much on what he knows is important. All right. Here is a good one. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of living. It doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vow 1,000 times, come, yet again come, come. In Rumi's poetry, there is no hopelessness, there is no not trying, there is a sense of connection and starting to walk toward the beloved. He calls God the beloved. So it's connection, 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 and direction, 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 and no hopelessness. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of living, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vow 1,000 times, come, yet again, come, come. Let's see. Does it go farther? These are some of the stages of enlightenment within the short time we have. I don't think, we have to go completely through it, but Rumi took these stages, 7 stages of enlightenment. He took it of another mystic poet before his time, but he did meet Attar shortly when he was a teenager. And he copied within Sufism as a number of category of how to search for the path of the truth. And Attar believed that at first is talab. Talab is in Farsi, is the desire to know. And the second stage is ishq, which means love. And marifat is knowing, is like knowledge, science plus wisdom. And the fourth stage is istighna, which means contentment. And for your purposes, I would say the wisdom of wanting what you really need, but not everything, what the society tells you to need, what your parents tells you to need, what everybody else tells. It's just kind of going within and finding out for your path what you really need. So the next one is Tawheed, which is unity. Hayrat is wonderment, and Faqr Fana is the poetry, the poverty and annihilation, which very much means that you get to the stage that you don't need much. So I know I gave you a poem, and the poem that you have is the self to self. And I'm going to, shall we do another poem? So I'm going to do the poem that you have. And at first, let's hear a bit of the Farsi of this poem for you. درخت اگر متحرک بودی ز جای به جا نه رنج اره کشیدی نه زخم‌های جفا نه آفتاب و نه مهتاب و نور بخشیدی اگر مقیم بودندی چو صخره‌های سما فرات و دجله و جیحون چه تلخ بودندی اگر مقیم بودندی به جای چون دریا. So Rumi continues to sing a song of his heart within the rhythm. The Farsi rhythm of it is absolutely beautiful, and the rhythm can change. It's very much like a symphony. Let's look at the translation in English. If a tree could run or fly, it would not suffer from the teeth of a saw or the blows of an axe. If the sun did not run across the sky, the world would not see the colors of morning. If water did not rise from the sea, plants would not be quickened by the rivers or rain. It's only when a drop leaves the ocean and returns that it can find an oyster and become a pearl. When Joseph left his father, both were weeping. Didn't he gain a kingdom and a fortune in the end? Didn't the prophet gain the world and 100 empires by traveling to Medina? But you don't need to go anywhere. Journey within yourself. Enter a mine of rubies and bathe in the splendor of your own light. O Great One, journey from self to self and find the mind of gold. Leave behind what is sour and bitter. Move toward what is sweet. Be like the 1,000 different fruits that grow from briny soil. This is the miracle. Every tree becomes beautiful when touched by the sunlight. Every soul becomes God when touched by the sun of Shams Tabriz. So, of course, you remember that Shams is the teacher who opened his heart and who taught him that it's not enough to be just a mighty Islamic scholar. It is better to be on the path of the true connection between you and the source and the God, and open up to that. And the growth and the learning is everlasting. It just continues with us even after we die. So he calls this poem the journey from self to self, like the flowers that come from dark soil. Our soul can surge and go beyond all the limitation we have. And this is one of the gifts that Rumi left for us. If you notice within this poem, he also is understanding that the body is kind of within, he called it within a jail of the sixth direction of the world. What are the six direction? You know, well, south, north, west, east, upper, and below your feet. So all the time he talks about شش جهت هست in جهان. تکیه بر این جهان مکن. Only six direction is this a tangible life. Don't just consider this sixth direction, go beyond it. That's what is the master teacher is teaching us, to say, you know, go beyond the limitations that you see in your body, in your circumstance, in your physical environment. And did you notice how many he used in this poem Old Testament and New Testament? Look at how beautifully he works and talk about Joseph. When Joseph left his father, both were weeping. Didn't he gain a kingdom and a fortune in the end? How many people know the story of Joseph here? Yeah? Yeah? And what is about the Prophet Muhammad here? Didn't the Prophet gain a world and 100 empires by traveling to Medina? This is very much like Joseph, you know. Brothers were jealous of him and they put him in the well and, you know, hoped that he will be dead because they were so jealous. And not only he died, but also he became, you know, he became a prince when he went to Egypt, when they took him to Egypt. And he actually could come back and rescue his brothers. The same was for Prophet of Muhammad when he acknowledged that he is, you know, a messenger of God. A lot of people were after him to kill him. And all he did is he traveled from Mecca to Medina, and his Islamic, you know, nation grew from that, just moving from one place to another place. Like Rumi and myself, we both were kind of pushed out of where it was our birthplace and had to travel long. You know, have a long journey to reside somewhere else. So Rumi sees that as a traveling not only within ourselves, but exploring a lot more of the world that we are given. I love the ending when he talks about Shams. By the way, the meaning of Shams in Arabic is S-U-N, sun. And Rumi plays at the end of this poem with it. Every tree becomes beautiful when touched by sunlight. Every soul becomes God when touched by the sun of Shams Tabriz. So he plays, he always remembers his teacher. Believe it or not, Rumi has a poem that calls, actually, I would like to share with you that this poetry does not have any, this poetry doesn't have any title in Farsi. And they are a line of the poetry that they give it a title in English. The next one I would like to read for you, it calls Unfold Your Own Myth. Who gets up early to discover the moment light begins? Who finds us here, circling, bewildered, like atoms? Who comes to a spring thirsty and finds the moon reflected in it? Who likes Jacob, blind with grief and age, smells the shirt of his lost son and can see again? Who lets a bucket down and brings up a flowing prophet? Or like Moses, goes for fire and finds what burns inside the sunrise? Jesus slips into a house to escape enemies and opens a door to the other world. Solomon cuts open a fish and there is a gold ring. Omar storms to kill the prophet and leaves with blessings. Chase a deer and end up everywhere. An oyster opens his mouth to swallow one drop. Now there is a pearl. Okay, something is missing. I'm sorry. I don't think we have this longer poem on the. Chase the deer and end up everywhere. An oyster opened his mouth to swallow one drop, and now there is a pearl. A vagrant wanders empty rooms. Suddenly he is wealthy, but don't be satisfied with the poems and the stories of how things have gone with others. Unfold your own myth without complicated explanation, so everyone will understand the passage we have opened to you. Start walking toward Shams, the rays of the sun. Your legs will get heavy and tired. Then comes a moment of feeling the wings you have grown lifting. Okay. How much time do we have? Do we have another?
Yeah.
We have another? How 20 minutes? Okay, I would like to read to you the story of Jesus. Would you like to hear one Jesus story? Okay, the Jesus story is, all right. It says what Jesus runs away from. And usually I explain a little bit about these stories, but I won't do it right now because he kind of, in translation, is like, what is he running from? So I wanted to think about that. What is he running from? Is it? Okay, I don't think we have that on. Okay, the son of Mary, Jesus, hurries up a slope as though a wild animal were chasing him. Someone following him asked, "Where are you going?" "No one is after you." Jesus keeps on saying nothing across two more fields. "Are you the one who says the word over a dead person?" so that he wakes up? I am. Did you not make the clay birds fly? Yes. Who then could possibly cause you to run like this? Jesus slowed down his pace. I say the great name over the deaf and the blind. They are healed. Over a stony mountainside, and it tears its mantle down to the navel. Over not existence, it comes to existence. But when I speak lovingly for others, for days, with those who take human warmth and monk it, when I say the name to them, nothing happens. They remain rock or turn to sand, where no plants can grow. Other diseases are ways for mercy to enter, but these non-responding breeds violence and coldness toward God. I am fleeing from that. As little by little air steals water, so praise is dried up and evaporates with foolish people. A cynic steals body heat. He does not feel the sun. Jesus wasn't running from actual people. He was teaching in a new way. So you see that Rumi, a 13th century mystic, Islamic mystic poet, is giving us this message of Jesus, that even Jesus, who can bring death to life, who can make a clay bird fly, cannot do anything with the person who doesn't have the desire to know, who is monking and doesn't really, is it on still? I would like to take it to the chart again. I don't see her. So the second stage, actually, the first stage was the stage of knowing. And they say if you don't have the thirst of the knowing, nobody can do anything to you. The best teachers, the best managers, nobody can be, you're not able to be guided, basically. You can't do that, you can't change a person. We know in 21st century, we are not able to change a person unless the person wanted to change by themselves. They have to come to realization that they wanted to change. They wanted to have a different life. So that's what Rumi is talking about. And he takes this story of Jesus saying, in the Old Testament and the New Testament, you see always that prophets go to the up high mountain to just kind of be in a secluded place. Because when they come down, they have to teach all these people things they may or may not understand. And if they have the thirst and the desire to want it to understand, they do. But if they don't, what do you do with it? So basically, you can't do anything. And this is one of the poems that's very close to my heart. Okay, can we do another poem? Yes. This one is really called Guest House. And most of these poems, not all of them, are from the Essential Rumi, translated by Coleman Barks. If you are interested after this lecture to go get the book, it has really a very good diversity of 26,000 verses that Rumi had taught us. This one called Guest House. And the guest house is really used the most by many students and psychologists because it's so much in the acceptance of who we are and how we have to relate to the different dimensions and different levels of being a human. which, as many of us may know, is not that easy. The guest house. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So that's you don't disregard anything. And fear, you know, Rumi has a lot of poems about fear, and he really wanted us to follow what we love. And when the fear comes, he would like us to face the fear and go through the fear, but not shy away from the fear. And Guest House is a good poem if you wanted to read when you are through difficulty, to know that all of these thoughts is not you, it's just a version in the circumstance of you, and you are able to transform it. That's what he's teaching. He's about path of transformation of who you really are. And within his poetry, what is beautiful is he called the best version of you, who you are, Solomon. So whoever you are, like Fariba, the best version of Fariba is Solomon. The best version of you is Solomon. So we have to sit for a while to figure out why he figured out Solomon is the best version for a humankind. But I love how he actually applies not only in his time but also in our time the essence and the meaning of Old Testament, New Testament, and Quran. This one is probably, how many of you knew Rumi before you came here today? Okay, all right. So for those of you who don't, I think many of people who know Rumi, they know this poem, but for those of you who don't, listen what he said in 13th century, 800 years ago. Only breath is the name of this poem. Not Christian or Jew or Muslim, not Hindu, Buddhist, Sufi or Zen, not any religion or cultural system. I'm not from the East or the West, not out of the ocean or up from the ground, not natural or ethereal, not composed of elements at all. I do not exist. I'm not an entity in this world or the next, did not descend from Adam or Eve or any origin story. My place is placeless, a trace of traceless, neither body or soul. I belong to the beloved, have seen the two worlds as one, and that one call to and know, first, last, outer, inner, only that breathing, only that breath breathing human being. I belong to the beloved. I have seen the two worlds as one, and that one call to and know, first, last, outer, inner, only that breath, breathing human being. That's quite magical for Rumi. So, a bit more? A bit. I like to share with you, since I talk about Shams, just a bit of how Rumi expressed his feelings for his teacher, what his teacher done from his own language, what he said, what Rumi has done for him. When I encountered Shams, Rumi wrote, I realized he knew the secret of my heart. He created a storm within me and could answer my questions. Until then, I have been a carefree person and the most respected scholar in the city. People kissed my hand and paid homage to me. In every gathering and meeting, I was placed at the head above everyone else. My teachings were nourishment to the souls of my people, but Shams changed all of that. He guided me to the path of love, and I learned the truth in his school. I was ravaged by love and became strong. I became slave to love and became free. The divine ecstasy in love, which is an attribute of God, led me to the truth. Every moment that I was with Shams, my soul was in a state of adoration, and I was in touch with the Supreme Soul. So, can they ask questions? Yeah?
Any questions?
Yes.
Do you see some similarities between Khalil Gibran and Rumi? Can you speak up?
Repeat the question.
Khalil
Did you
Gibran?
hear me?
Did you say Khalil Gibran?
Yes.
Yeah. And Rumi?
Yes. Do you see similarities?
I would say yes, because they both try to see the essence within everyday life and what we do. At the same time, I can say it because Rumi came from, was rooted in the Sufism. His language has imagery language that has its own code. For example, night means this life, enlightenment means, so it's kind of a language that he tapped into before him, and he adopted, and his poetry comes from that language. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. So in terms of essence, I would say yes. Yes.
Speaking of the language,
Yes.
I read that you can't read the Quran unless you read it in Arabic, because any translation is not the Quran. But is poetry, are the translations considered accurate?
I would say, as an educator, that, for example, if I have Kulban Bark's translation, which may or may not be the literal translation. He's a poet, English poet, and he takes the literal translation. He doesn't know Farsi. He takes the literal translation of Rumi's poetry, and he put it in an attractive English poetry. But I believe, because of the beauty and how it resonates to the people in the language, in English language. It really transmits the meaning of the verses very well. I learned it myself in Farsi, but I see the same effect when I use the translation, and that's why I use most of his translation today. I took maybe 2 other translations from someone else, but mostly from Coleman Barks, because it does honor the essence of the teachings, but is not very literal. So I have classes that I teach from the literal. They have me, which is Farsi, and then they have word by word. It's a lot more work, and I wouldn't say if someone wanted to go through the path of enlightenment or through the path of transformation and learn the wisdom of these teachings within the literal translation or a translation that comes from Coleman Barks or somebody else, open it up a little bit more. Farsi of it can be very difficult, and literal translation can be difficult. So I would say, if you honor the essence, the translation does, especially Jonathan Starr and Nicholson did actually the literal translation. So all of it, in my experience, work. I, as an educator, am not so picky about it as long as it transmits the meaning of the transformation of what Rumi meant. But I have like lawyers students who get very upset about Coleman Barks' translation.
Could you spell his name?
Barks is last name. Coleman is his first name. Coleman, Clomen, and Barks is Barks. Col. So
And you say he doesn't speak Farsi?
he doesn't speak Farsi.
How can he translate?
He sat with some, a transformative Sufi teacher and kind of understood the language that we talk about, this language of imagery that comes, it's probably, I would say, is even older than Sufism and Islamic mysticism, because in the old time, what did they do? With the trade, they went around, and also they had literature with them, and wise people were the bridges between among the cultures. So the language of imagery is built among cross-cultural. That's why Rumi can be such a cross-cultural universal figure today for us, because he used a language of imagery that was built up within all other cultures. It wasn't built up just within the Persian culture or Islamic culture. So there is a language, collective language, like Jung talks about, like a dream language within Rumi's poetry language. And that was the difference that I mentioned with Khalil Gibran. He is not only opening the wisdom or transformational meaning of the path and the journey we have on the earth. He is really at the same time tapping on the collective consciousness as a human. Anybody else? Yes.
Well, I'm sorry I was late before you discussed this, but his father, did he write the Drowning book?
Yes. His father is an interesting figure. Actually, his father's teachings and writings becomes the focal point between the dispute between Shams and Rumi, because Rumi is very proud of his father's teaching. All of us know the name of Sharia because we hear all the time in the TV. So what do you think it means? It means the Islamic law, the law of the path, basically. It means Sharia. And it means, in Quranic verses, closer to Judaism than Christianity. It's pillars of Islam, and there are rules, how to give, how to travel, how to do everything. So this is Sharia law. And the Sharia law is a work of the clergy to teach. So his father for sure, and him, both of them, they were very well versed within the schools of Sharia law. But his father also practiced tariqat, which means your own path to God. Because Sufis believe, each of us are like a single hair attached to the head of these beautiful women who they call beloved, so is God, is the image of God, although imagery is taboo in Islam, it's not so taboo in Sufism. So we all have our own special way to connect to the source. And they call that tariqat. If you become a Sufi, you are the seeker of the path of your own special connection to God, to the beloved. And his father was practicing actually both. He was practicing tariqat and shariat. Shams was beyond all of these regulation, I would say, and law. For example, Shams looked really very, very like a beggar, tall, very thin beggar, and he would appear in front of the house of some Muslims, and they wouldn't even, invite him in to carry a couple of, low chores for them and give them some food. But he would appear in front of some Christian household, and they saw Jesus in him. They would take him in, wash his feet, and just we see Christ in you. So they could see spirit in him. So Shams wandered around enough to see that people who are connected, they kind of merge together, they understand each other, they see the true Christ in each other, the light of the Christ in each other. So Shams was beyond all of that. When he came to Rumi's life, there are a number of stories that talks about how Shams had challenged Rumi to get rid of his father's book, but they're wonderful. So I'm glad you read them. They speak into it too. It's just how do you want dissent? By the way, I think that your question reminded me on one important essential teaching of Rumi. It's the spirit in the matter, which I talked about at first. And the spirit in the matter, Rumi's emphasis is all the time. The spirit is first. You can't get only busy taking care of your clay house, of your matter. Just the spirit has to be the leader. That's why they have this ranking. If you want to manage your clay house, your everyday life, okay, Sharia is good. But how about those of us who are more thirsty? Then you really need to find your own connection to God. And so they have more and more levels that they teach you that.
We're out of time, so let's meet Fariba.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry for the problem.